That's what my Uncle Robert loved to tell everyone at every company event. Standing at the podium in his perfectly tailored suit, he'd recount how he and my father had started in their garage, two brothers with a dream of revolutionizing medical technology. What he never mentioned was that it was my father, James Anderson, who had been the true innovator, the genius behind the patents that built our empire. And he certainly never mentioned how he'd maneuvered to take control after my father's accident 10 years ago. I'm David Anderson, and this is the story of how I spent 5 years secretly reclaiming my father's legacy, one patent at a time. David, are you even listening? Uncle Robert's voice cut through my thoughts. We were sitting in his corner office, 42 floors above Seattle's bustling tech district. These quarterly reports are unacceptable. R&D costs are through the roof, and we have nothing to show for it. I adjusted my glasses, a gesture that always made him think I was nervous. We're making progress, Uncle Robert. The new neural interface project is a waste of resources, he cut in, tossing the report onto his mahogany desk. The board meeting is next week. I need results, not promises. Or maybe it's time to admit that unlike your father, you didn't inherit the innovation gene. I bit back my response. If he only knew that the neural interface project was already complete, its patents quietly filed under my private holding company, just like the last 3 failed projects he killed. Perhaps you're right, I said, playing my part. Maybe I should focus on something smaller. He leaned back, satisfaction crossing his face. I've been saying that for years. You're not your father, David. The sooner you accept that, the better. I gathered my papers and stood to leave. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see our company logo glowing against the Seattle skyline. Meditech Solutions, innovating tomorrow's healthcare. Oh, and David? Uncle Robert called as I reached the door. Clean yourself up before the board meeting. That shabby professor look might have worked in R&D, but you're presenting to the board now. Try to look like an Anderson for once. I nodded and left, walking past the portrait of my father that hung in the corridor. James Anderson smiled down at me, frozen in time before the accident that had left him in a coma. Before Uncle Robert had used a crisis to seize control, forcing my mother to sell her shares for a fraction of their worth. I was 17 then, too young to stop it, but not too young to start planning. My office was 20 floors down, smaller, darker, and cluttered with the organized chaos of actual research. Sarah, my assistant, and the only person who knew the truth, was waiting with a stack of documents. He fell for it, she asked, closing the door. I smiled, loosening my intentionally crooked tie. Completely. Has Marcus confirmed the patent office's decision? She handed me a sealed envelope. Came through this morning. All 7 patents approved, backdated to your original filings. The neural interface, the bioelectric mesh, everything. Your uncle has no idea they even exist. And the ownership structure. Triple blind holding companies, just like the others. Even if they trace them, they'll never get through all the layers. She paused, watching me review the documents. David, are you sure about this? Once you reveal everything at the board meeting. I touched the photograph on my desk, my father and me in his lab, both of us grinning over some shared discovery. He tried to erase my father from his own company, Sarah. Used a family tragedy to steal everything we built. And now, he has the nerve to tell me, I'm not good enough to be an Anderson? While you've secretly developed more groundbreaking patents in 5 years than the company has in the last 10, she finished. I know. Be careful. Men like your uncle don't lose gracefully. I locked the patents in my safe and turned to my computer, checking the special email account I used to communicate with my father's old friend, Judge William Morrison. The reply I'd been waiting for had finally arrived. Medical proxy transfer approved. You now have full legal authority regarding your father's care. Another piece falling into place. Uncle Robert had arranged for my father's care at a private facility, maintaining control over both his medical decisions and his remaining patents. He'd never expected me to spend years building relationships with the hospital board, documenting every neglectful decision, every missed treatment opportunity. Sarah was still watching me, concern evident in her expression. What are you telling me? The doctors say there's a new treatment, experimental, using technology based on Dad's original research. Research that Uncle Robert buried because it wasn't immediately profitable. I met her gaze. There's a chance it could help him wake up. My God, she whispered. Does your uncle know? He will. At the board meeting, along with everything else. I turned back to the photograph. 10 years ago, he thought he'd won everything. The company, the patents, the Anderson legacy. He thought I was just a scared teenager who'd accept whatever scraps he offered. But you were already planning this, Sarah said softly. Even then. I nodded, remembering that first night after the accident, when I'd found my father's hidden lab notebooks, when I'd discovered the truth about Uncle Robert's involvement in the equipment failure that had put my father in a coma. A scared teenager who spent the next decade becoming exactly what he wanted. The quiet, ineffective nephew who couldn't live up to his father's genius. The perfect cover for building something right under his nose. My phone buzzed. A message from Uncle Robert's secretary. Mr. Anderson requests your preliminary presentation materials by 5 p.m. I smiled, thinking of the presentation I'd actually prepared. Not the watered-down failure he was expecting, but a comprehensive revelation of every patent I'd secretly developed, every innovation he'd dismissed as impossible, every piece of evidence proving that I wasn't just my father's son, I was his revenge. Sarah, I said, straightening my purposefully rumpled jacket, I think it's time we stopped playing the part of the incompetent division. Call Marcus at the patent office. Tell him to prepare everything we discussed. Next week's board meeting is going to be educational. She nodded, already reaching for her phone. And your uncle? I looked out at the Seattle skyline, at the company logo my father had designed. Let him enjoy his corner office for a few more days. After all, the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about letting them see exactly how badly they've lost. The stage was set. The patents were secured. And in 7 days, Uncle Robert would learn that the nephew he dismissed as a failure had been building an arsenal of innovations that would reshape not just the company, but the entire medical technology industry, all while playing the role of the disappointment he created. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in fighting back, but in letting them think they've already won. And next week, when those patent documents appeared on the screen, Uncle Robert would finally understand just how completely he'd lost the war he didn't even know he was fighting. The week before the board meeting passed in a blur of careful preparation. Uncle Robert, confident in his control, had no idea that every dismissive comment, every condescending gesture, was being meticulously documented. Each interaction another nail in the coffin of his carefully constructed lies. Your presentation materials are a joke, he declared, tossing my intentionally flawed preliminary report across his desk. Basic research any first-year intern could produce. Is this really the best you can do? I adjusted my glasses nervously. a gesture I'd practiced until it became second nature. I can revise it. Don't bother. He turned to stare out his window at the Seattle skyline. I've already asked Dr. Phillips to prepare a backup presentation. At least he understands what real innovation looks like. Dr. Phillips, the same researcher who had helped Uncle Robert sabotage my father's lab equipment 10 years ago. I'd found the evidence in encrypted emails, carefully preserved on backup servers that Robert thought he'd wiped clean. Of course, I mumbled, gathering the scattered papers. Whatever you think is best. His voice stopped me at the door. You know, David, maybe it's time you considered a different career path. Your father, he'd understand. Not everyone inherits the genius gene. I turned, letting him see exactly what he expected. Defeat, resignation, the familiar shame of a son who couldn't measure up. Maybe you're right. Back in my office, Sarah was waiting with the real presentation materials. Everything's ready, she said, closing the door. Marcus confirmed that all patent registrations are now publicly searchable. The timing will be perfect. I unlocked my safe and pulled out a thick folder labeled Project Legacy. Every innovation I'd developed over the past 5 years, each one building on my father's original research. The neural interface that could revolutionize prosthetic limbs. The bioelectric mesh that could regenerate damaged nerve tissue. And most importantly, the therapeutic protocol that could help patients like my father emerge from long-term comas. The hospital board voted this morning, Sarah continued. They've approved the transfer of your father's care to the new facility. Everything's in place for the treatment to begin next week. I nodded, thinking of the private medical center I'd secretly helped fund, staffed by doctors who'd worked with my father before the accident. Has Uncle Robert noticed any of the preparations? He's too busy damage controlling the Milton contract situation. Sarah smirked. Apparently, their CEO was very upset to learn that their primary contact at Meditech has been developing revolutionary technology for a competing firm. That had been one of my more elegant moves, using a shell company to file patents that would directly compete with Uncle Robert's most lucrative contracts. The resulting stock volatility had the board nervous, making them more receptive to what I was about to reveal. David? Sarah's voice softened. There's something else you should see. She handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a police report from 10 years ago, the official investigation into my father's accident. Most of it I'd seen before, but one detail caught my eye. A witness statement that had been mysteriously deleted from the digital records. Where did you find this? Your father's old secretary finally agreed to talk. She kept a hard copy, afraid of what your uncle might do if he knew. Sarah pointed to a highlighted section. Read this part. The statement described unusual activity in the lab the night before the accident. Someone accessing the equipment after hours, making unauthorized modifications. The witness had reported it to Robert Anderson, who assured her he would handle it personally. The next day, my father was found unconscious in his lab, the victim of an unexplained equipment malfunction. We already knew he was responsible, I said quietly. Yes, but this is proof. Official documentation that he was warned about potential tampering and did nothing. Sarah met my gaze. This isn't just about patents anymore, David. This is criminal negligence at best, attempted murder at worst. I carefully resealed the envelope. Have copies sent to every board member's private email, timed to arrive during my presentation. The next few days passed in careful orchestration. I made sure to appear distracted and unprepared whenever Uncle Robert was watching. I fumbled equipment during demonstrations, stuttered through progress reports, played the part of the failing son so perfectly that he actually began to feel sorry for me. "I've been thinking," he said during our final pre-board meeting. "Maybe we could find you a position in corporate communications, something less technical." "That's very kind," I replied, letting my voice shake slightly. "But I'd like to try presenting my research first. One last time." He sighed paternally. "If you insist, just try not to embarrass yourself too badly, for your father's sake." The morning of the board meeting, I arrived early to find Sarah already in my office, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Marcus called," she reported. "The patent office just published everything. Full documentation, complete ownership trails, all of it." She paused. "There's no going back after this." I walked to my window, looking down at the city awakening below. Somewhere out there, in a private medical facility, my father lay waiting for the treatment that could bring him back to us. The treatment his own brother had dismissed as impossible. "Did you know," I said quietly, "that the night before the accident, Dad told me he was planning to remove Uncle Robert from the company. He discovered financial irregularities, unauthorized testing, ethical violations. He was going to present it all at the next board meeting." Sarah's eyes widened. "Just like you're doing today. History repeats itself." I turned back to my desk, beginning to gather the real presentation materials. But this time, the son finishes what the father started. My phone buzzed. Uncle Robert's final message before the meeting. "Try not to waste too much of the board's time. Dr. Phillips' presentation will cover any gaps." I smiled, thinking of the gaps that were about to be revealed in his own carefully constructed facade. The patents he didn't know existed. The witness statement he thought he buried. The evidence of his involvement in my father's accident. "It's time," Sarah said softly. I straightened my tie. No more intentional sloppiness, and picked up my presentation materials. "Uncle Robert wanted me to be a failure," I said. "He spent 10 years convincing everyone that I couldn't live up to my father's legacy. And instead, I surpassed it. Built something bigger than he could imagine. Right under his nose." I headed for the door. Let's go show him exactly what the Anderson genius gene can do. The boardroom awaited, and with it, a reckoning 10 years in the making. Uncle Robert thought he was about to witness my final failure. Instead, he was about to learn that sometimes the greatest innovations aren't just technological. Sometimes they're the careful, patient construction of a truth so powerful it can shatter a decade of lies with a single presentation. And I had one hell of a presentation ready. The Meditech Solutions boardroom gleamed with power and privilege. 15 board members seated around a massive mahogany table, each representing billions in investment capital. Uncle Robert sat at the head, naturally, with Dr. Phillips at his right hand. I could see them exchanging confident smiles, already anticipating my humiliation. If only they knew. "Let's begin," Uncle Robert announced, his voice carrying that familiar note of condescension. "David has prepared a presentation on his recent research activities. Try to be patient." A few board members chuckled politely. I stood, connecting my laptop to the room's display system. Sarah sat in the corner, recording everything as planned. "Thank you, Uncle Robert," I said, my voice steady. No more nervous adjustments of my glasses. No more practiced stumbling. I'd like to discuss the future of medical technology, specifically in neural interfaces and regenerative medicine. "We've been through this," Robert interrupted. "Your preliminary reports showed no viable." "Those weren't my real reports," I said quietly. The room went still. "Those were what I wanted you to see. Just like you've spent 10 years seeing exactly what you wanted to see. A failure. A disappointment. A son who couldn't match his father's genius. I clicked to the first slide. Patent documents filled the screen. My name clearly listed as inventor. Then another, and another. 7 in total, each representing a breakthrough that could revolutionize modern medicine. What is this? Dr. Phillips demanded, shuffling through his papers. These patents aren't in our database. Because they don't belong to Meditech, I replied. They're registered to my private holdings. Every innovation you dismissed, every project you killed, I developed them independently, while playing the role you created for me. Uncle Robert's face had gone pale. This is corporate espionage, using company resources for private. Actually, I clicked to the next slide, showing detailed financial records. Everything was developed using my own resources. Resources I've been accumulating since I was 17, since the day of my father's accident. The boardroom erupted in whispers. I saw several members checking their phones, no doubt finding the email Sarah had timed to arrive at exactly this moment. The neural interface you called impossible? I continued, my voice gaining strength. It's already in clinical trials. The regenerative mesh you said would never work. 3 major hospitals are preparing to adopt it. And the coma recovery protocol you dismissed as fantasy. I turned directly to my uncle. That begins testing next week, on Dad. Robert shot to his feet. D is incompetenti fraud must leave, he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. He's trying to steal my brother's legacy. Your brother's legacy? I opened the final file. Let's talk about that legacy, Uncle Robert. Let's talk about what really happened in Dad's lab 10 years ago. The police report appeared on screen, the witness statement highlighted. Then the encrypted emails between Robert and Dr. Phillips discussing equipment modifications. Financial records showing money transferred to offshore accounts the day before the accident. You see, I addressed the board directly. My father was planning to remove his brother from the company. He discovered ethical violations, unauthorized testing, financial fraud. He was going to present it all at the next board meeting. I paused, letting the parallel sink in. Sound familiar? Dr. Phillips suddenly stood, heading for the door, but 2 security guards, ones I'd personally hired, blocked his exit. 10 years ago, you thought you'd won everything, I told my uncle, who had collapsed back into his chair. The company, the patents, the Anderson legacy. You thought you destroyed one brother and controlled the other. You don't understand, he whispered. I built this company too. I deserved to nearly kill your brother, to steal his son's inheritance, to bury innovations that could help millions, just because they weren't immediately profitable. I shook my head. No, Uncle Robert, you deserved exactly what you're about to get. On cue, the boardroom doors opened. 2 police detectives entered, followed by my father's old secretary, the witness whose statement had been buried a decade ago. Robert Anderson, the lead detective, announced, "You're under arrest for attempted murder, corporate fraud, and criminal conspiracy." As they led my uncle away, I turned back to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll find complete documentation of everything I've presented today in your secure emails, along with my proposal for restructuring Meditech's leadership and implementing these new technologies. One by one they nodded. They were business people, after all. They knew a winning proposition when they saw one. The next few hours passed in a blur of signatures, handshakes, and congratulations. By sunset, I stood in my father's old office, my office now, watching the city lights come alive below. Sarah found me there, holding a fresh stack of papers. The hospital called. They're ready to begin your father's treatment whenever you give the word. I touched the photograph on the desk. Dad and me in his lab, both of us grinning. Schedule it for tomorrow. It's time to bring him home. The media's going crazy, she added. Everyone wants to know how the failed son managed to develop 7 groundbreaking patents while pretending to be incompetent. I smiled, thinking of all the roles we play in life. The failed son, the grieving nephew, the secret genius biding his time. Tell them the truth, I said. Tell them I learned from the best. My father taught me that true innovation isn't about appearance or power. It's about patience, dedication, and the quiet certainty that truth eventually prevails. Later that night, I visited Dad in his new medical facility. The doctors were optimistic about the treatment's potential. Even if he didn't fully recover, they expected him to regain consciousness, to finally learn how his son had protected and avenged his legacy. You were right, Dad, I whispered, holding his hand. The Anderson genius didn't skip a generation. It just learned to work in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to step into the light. In the end, the greatest revenge wasn't just reclaiming the patents or exposing Uncle Robert's crimes. It wasn't even about becoming CEO of the company he tried to steal. The greatest revenge was knowing that somewhere in a prison cell, my uncle was finally understanding the truth. He'd spent 10 years mentoring his own destruction, teaching me exactly how to play the role of the failure while building something far greater than he could imagine. And that was the most innovative thing of all, because sometimes the quietest revolutions are the ones that change everything. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in what you show the world, but in what you keep hidden until exactly the right moment. Just ask Uncle Robert. He has plenty of time to think about it now. As for me, I have a company to run, technologies to develop, and most importantly, a father to help heal. After all, that's the true Anderson legacy, not power or patents or profit, but the relentless pursuit of innovations that can make the world better. One quiet revolution at a time.
One day, something really unexpected happened to me. It all began when I took my husband to the doctor for a regular checkup. We thought it would be just a normal visit, but it turned out to be a big shock. The doctor, Dr. Lawrence, looked very serious and told us some scary news about my husband's health. His serious face made it clear this was serious. I felt really scared and couldn't believe what I was hearing. The person I loved and took care of was now causing me worry and fear. Dr. Lawrence told me I should think about my own safety and maybe stay away from my husband for a while. His words made me feel really overwhelmed and afraid. My name is Betty Frieden, and I'm 50 years old. I spent the last 10 years working at a big company that makes medicine. That place feels like a second home to me, giving me comfort and making me feel like I belong there. Even though I'm older, I've kept working full-time and earned respect from my coworkers. Not many people my age still work full-time, but I've always been okay with it. Part of the reason I'm so dedicated to my job is because I didn't get married until 4 years ago. My boss, Gerald, and I are close because we're both single. Once he jokingly asked me if I was ever going to get married, but I knew he was just teasing. Around that time, I was seeing Richard secretly. He's older than me, was married before, and like me, doesn't want kids. We met through a service that helps people find companionship later in life. We decided to keep our marriage quiet, not telling anyone about our plans, even though our boss made jokes about us getting married. Eventually, Richard and I got married quietly, without any big ceremony, just signing papers at City Hall. It was simpler than I expected, but I was excited about our future together. But when Dr. Lawrence gave me scary advice, I had to rethink everything. My feelings of care for my sick husband were now mixed with fear and confusion. Dr. Lawrence's words kept echoing in my head, telling me I needed to act to keep myself safe. As I stood there trying to understand what was happening, I realized I had to make a decision quickly. Suddenly, the life I knew and the plans I had were uncertain. I'm LA, and my husband Richard works at a factory. Honestly, I make more money than he does. Richard started working at the factory right after high school. I grew up in an orphanage and always wanted to be independent. That's why I didn't want to quit my job at the pharmaceutical company even after we got married. I love my job too much. When Richard and I got married, I told my boss Gerald right away. He congratulated me, but I could tell he felt a little sad. Maybe he was lonely because I, his friend who was also single, got married first. I tried joking with him about it, but he didn't seem to want to talk about it, so I dropped it. Even though Gerald's reaction was a bit strange, I was really happy to start this new part of my life with Richard. I imagined all the great things we'd do together, but real life wasn't as exciting as my dreams. Being newlyweds was pretty normal. Not much changed for me. I kept working, and the biggest difference was moving to a quieter area and driving to work instead of taking a bus. Richard and I shared my old car because he didn't have one. About a year after we got married, things started to go wrong. Richard began acting differently. He didn't seem himself. He barely touched his breakfast, seemed lost in his thoughts, and even mixed up simple things like condiments. His clothes didn't match, and he became quieter both at work and at home. While I've always admired Richard's quiet strength, his silence started to weigh heavily on me, making me feel like I was all alone. This feeling of loneliness grew as I noticed these small but important changes in him. It hit me that Richard might be going through a mental health problem. Seeing someone you love struggle without knowing how to help them is really tough. So I decided to take Richard to a special clinic that helps with both mental and physical health. There, he was diagnosed with depression. I knew a bit about depression, but hearing the official diagnosis made everything seem a bit darker. The doctor explained that the best way to deal with depression is to figure out what's causing it and tackle that directly. But finding out what exactly was making Richard depressed was hard. He'd been working at the same factory for years without any problems, and nothing big had changed at his job. I even worried that maybe our marriage was somehow making him feel this way. As we talked with the doctor, I reassured him that Richard and I were living a happy life together, and we couldn't pinpoint any specific problems at home that might have caused Richard's depression. The doctor told us to come back if anything changed, or if we figured out what might be causing his depression. But even after visiting the clinic multiple times, we couldn't find out why Richard was feeling so down. And as time went on, his depression only got worse. On his worst days, he could hardly get out of bed, often had headaches, and sometimes had to call in sick to work. He lost his appetite and a noticeable amount of weight. Eventually, he had to quit his job because he couldn't keep up anymore. Richard felt really guilty for relying on me financially, but I assured him that I was okay with working. My main concern was his health. It was really hard to see him suffering so much, and I was always worried about him. Once, when I was at work, Richard went out and got lost on his way back home. That made me worry even more because I wondered if he was not just dealing with depression, but maybe even dementia. That thought added to my stress. When my coworkers asked how things were going, I had to admit that Richard wasn't getting better. It's really tough to watch someone you love struggle so much without being able to help them. One day, Gerald, my boss, noticed that I looked really tired and gave me an energy drink. It made me feel a little better, and I was touched by his kindness. He reminded me that we're all in this together, and his words almost made me cry. With everything going on with Richard, I hadn't realized how much stress I was under. It became clear that I needed to take care of myself too, or else I might fall apart. So I threw myself into my work, trying to keep things as normal as possible in our lives. A year had gone by, but things hadn't gotten any better for Richard. If anything, they'd gotten worse. As our third wedding anniversary approached, I couldn't see any improvement in his condition. Then, one morning, I realized our car was missing. I checked again, but it was definitely gone. Since Richard's diagnosis, I was the only one who drove it, and I hadn't used it since the day before. So it should have been at home. I asked Richard if he knew where the car might be. He said he thought it was there when he got home yesterday. I remember he had gone out for a bit while I was at work. The doctor had suggested he try walking or jogging to help him cope. If the car was there when he came back, it must have disappeared during the night. With the car gone, I had to use public transport and ended up being about 10 minutes late for work. I explained the situation to Gerald, my boss, who was understanding but curious about the car's disappearance. He wondered if Richard might have taken it, but I didn't think so. Given Richard's condition and his reluctance to drive since getting sick, it didn't seem likely. Despite Richard's memory lapses and mood swings, I couldn't imagine him being responsible for the missing car. The car mystery just added another layer of complication to our already tough situation. Right after realizing the car was gone, I reported it to the police, hoping it would turn up soon. But deep down, I worried it might be gone for good. And if that wasn't enough, something else strange happened. On payday, I went to the bank to withdraw some money and found that my personal account was empty. I was shocked. We had a joint account, which I checked next, only to find it was also empty. This left me completely puzzled. Richard and I shared the joint account, but he didn't have access to my personal account, and he didn't know its PIN. Yet somehow, all our savings had disappeared. It hit me hard, and when I got home, I confronted Richard about it. I asked Richard if he knew anything about the money missing from our joint account. He seemed genuinely puzzled and said he didn't know anything about it. Because of his depression, I was hesitant to push him further, worried it might make things worse for him. Richard was staring at the ceiling, looking distant like he often did when he was lost in his thoughts because of his condition. It made me wonder if he could have taken the money, but I wasn't sure. Planning to talk to the police about it, I felt overwhelmed by losing both our car and our savings. The financial strain was tough, especially since I didn't have family to lean on for support. Growing up in an orphanage meant I didn't have parents to help me out in tough times. With Richard's condition not improving, it was suggested that we move him to a bigger hospital with more resources than the small clinic we'd been going to. The clinic had done what they could, but they thought a general hospital could give him better care. They even gave us a referral letter, so we decided to go to the general hospital for the first time. Taking a taxi there was a bit nerve-wracking for me, and Richard stayed quiet throughout the journey, lost in his own thoughts. As we arrived at the hospital, I took a deep breath, preparing for whatever might come next. I walked into the hospital and handed over the referral letter at the reception, expecting to wait a while since it was a busy place. The lobby was full of patients, each waiting for their turn. After about an hour, Richard was finally called in for his consultation. While he went inside, I took out a book to pass the time. But before Richard had even settled into the doctor's office, a nurse came up to me. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Simmons?" she asked. I said yes, and she told me the doctor wanted to see me. Since I was used to discussing Richard's condition, I figured it was something similar this time. I followed her to another room, feeling a bit anxious. There, I met a doctor who looked a bit older than me, with gray hair and a kind manner. Before I could even sit down properly, I asked if this was about Richard's condition. He nodded seriously, and I braced myself for whatever news he had for me. The doctor's next words caught me completely off guard. He told me that Richard had been arrested for fraud 10 years ago, and advised me to keep my distance from him. I was utterly confused. Why was this coming up now during a routine medical visit? The doctor explained that he suspected Richard might be faking his depression. He remembered treating a deep cut on Richard's leg during surgery 10 years ago, which raised his doubts. This revelation shocked me. I thought we were dealing with Richard's mental health, but now I was learning about his hidden past and a possible deception about his current condition. It was a lot to process, and I struggled to reconcile the caring husband I knew with the person the doctor described. When the doctor mentioned recognizing a large scar on Richard's right leg, it all started to make sense. I knew of the scar but didn't know how Richard got it, as he had never mentioned it. Finding out that the doctor before me was the one who had treated Richard's injury years ago felt like an unbelievable twist of fate. As the doctor continued, he revealed more about Richard's past. Richard had injured himself during a dispute with his ex-wife, which stemmed from him stealing her money and luxury items. Shockingly, he had even pretended to have dementia to lower his ex-wife's guard before committing the fraud. This pattern of faking illnesses to aid his deceit was truly disturbing. Learning about Richard's criminal history and arrest was overwhelming. I hadn't looked into his background before marrying him. Having been alone for most of my life, I was just grateful to find someone who wanted to be with me. The doctor's serious warning that Richard could be a danger to me sent shivers down my spine. His tone made it clear that this was a serious situation. It hit me hard. I had been deceived. In the days that followed, I struggled to act normal around Richard while secretly planning my next moves. I decided to install surveillance cameras around our home to monitor Richard's actions when I wasn't there. About a week later, I noticed a watch and bag were missing. When I reviewed the camera footage, I saw Richard leaving the house with them and returning later with a lot of cash, looking pleased with himself. His behavior didn't match that of someone suffering from depression. This footage confirmed my worst fears. Richard was the one behind the theft of my belongings, the car, and our savings. Seeing the hard evidence of his deceit was heartbreaking. Richard had lied to me and manipulated me, betraying the trust I had in him. It was clear that I needed to take serious action against someone who had pretended to be vulnerable and in need of care, only to take advantage of my kindness and generosity. The realization that Richard had betrayed my trust was unbearable. I had dedicated my life to working and caring for what I thought was a sick partner. The idea of getting a divorce seemed too small compared to the immense deception I had experienced. It was clear we needed to go our separate ways, but I wanted more than just a legal separation. I wanted Richard to truly grasp the seriousness of his actions and to make amends for the harm he had caused. With a heavy heart and tears threatening to spill, I gathered the divorce papers and filled them out meticulously, including all the necessary details. The following day, pretending everything was normal, I told Richard I needed to step out for a moment. I had already arranged to take a day off from work, explaining the urgency of my situation to my employer, who had agreed to my sudden absence. At the police station, I presented my case to the officers, showing them the footage I had captured of Richard's deceit. At first, they were hesitant to take action based solely on the video. However, after checking with the pawn shop where Richard had sold the stolen items and finding my car being sold as used, the evidence against him started to pile up. They also confirmed that he had accessed my bank accounts illegally, and suspicions arose about his supposed depression. As the truth came out, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Given Richard's criminal history, the police decided to act quickly and prepared to arrest him. When we returned home with the officers in the early afternoon, Richard looked surprised to see me and even more shocked by the police presence. Despite the divorce papers I held, his focus was on the officers as they informed him of his arrest for fraud. Richard protested, trying to use his depression as a defense, but I wasn't fooled. The doctor from the general hospital had already cast doubt on Richard's claims about his mental health. In that moment, facing the consequences of his actions and the end of our marriage, Richard's mask started to slip. Deciding to take legal action was tough, but it was necessary to protect myself and seek justice for the betrayal I had experienced. During my recent visit to the hospital, a doctor recognized Richard from his past deceitful behavior. He revealed that Richard had once pretended to have dementia to deceive his ex-wife, which made me question his current claims of depression even more. Despite the serious accusations against him, Richard remained unfazed in front of the police, casually denying everything. It was almost as if his history of deceit had prepared him for this moment. He showed no signs of guilt or remorse, instead challenging us to provide proof of his fraudulent actions. His boldness was shocking, especially with the police ready to arrest him based on solid evidence. It was clear that he was accustomed to manipulating situations and underestimating their seriousness. For 4 years, he had deceived me, taking advantage of my trust to steal from me and exploit my kindness. Yet, in a twisted attempt to shift blame, Richard suggested that it was my fault for being too trusting, which felt like another insult. His audacity was astounding. I had supported him, hoping for his recovery, only to be betrayed and treated with disdain. In that moment, I lost my patience. I declared my intention to seek legal advice and pursue alimony, urging Richard to face the consequences of his actions. My outburst at the police station surprised everyone, including the officers, but it finally seemed to shake Richard's composure. As the police handcuffed him, his defiance crumbled. He looked defeated, his arrogance replaced with frustration as he was led away. Watching the scene unfold, I felt detached, as if I were watching someone else's life unravel. Ever since the doctor's warning, nothing had seemed real anymore. Yet, here I was, confronted with the harsh reality of my situation, determined to move forward from the chaos Richard had caused. Watching Richard being taken away by the police felt surreal, almost like a scene from a dream. This moment marked a turning point, allowing me to imagine a return to the life I had before the chaos of marriage consumed it. As a sense of relief washed over me, knowing I wouldn't spend my future under Richard's manipulative control, I also felt a wave of loneliness. Waiting more than 47 years to marry, the idea of being alone once again overshadowed my newfound freedom. 2 months later, our divorce was finalized. Richard's arrest had caused a slight delay in the process, but by the time everything was official, my emotions had settled. I was able to reflect on our shared history with a clear mind. Richard's future was uncertain, facing imprisonment for his second offense. I could only hope that this experience would lead him to sincerely reconsider his choices. In the aftermath of our dissolved marriage, which had become nothing more than a disillusioning memory, I found myself contemplating my next steps over a simple lunch at work. It was then that my boss, Gerald, approached me with his store-bought hot dog lunch and made a seemingly casual yet loaded comment. "I think you'd be just fine if you were with me," he said almost offhandedly. His words caught me off guard, and it took a moment for their full weight to sink in, leaving me momentarily flustered. "Yes, I'm serious," he added, noticing my hesitation. His tone was smooth yet sincere. I was speechless, momentarily forgetting about my lunch as I processed his proposition. Gerald then went back to work, leaving me to contemplate his unexpected offer. In the days that followed, the idea of a romantic relationship with Gerald had never crossed my mind. Yet, I couldn't ignore the care and stability he had always shown me. His steady presence and responsible nature suddenly made me see him in a new light. Despite my initial reaction, as I continued to eat and ponder, the seeds of possibility that Gerald had planted began to take root in my mind, suggesting a future I hadn't dared to imagine until now. The idea of inviting Gerald out for a meal after work sparked a warmth within me. It kindled a sense of hope for the future. Perhaps this was the perfect moment to embark on a new journey, to explore the possibility of happiness and companionship once again. The thought of stepping out of my comfort zone and into a new beginning with someone who had shown me kindness and support felt both thrilling and comforting. Tonight, I decided, could be the start of something new and beautiful. Finally, I don't have to see you anymore. You've been living here without paying, but now it's time for you to go. We've put up with your freeloading for too long. Okay, I get it. I'll go. Thanks for everything. I packed my things fast and left the house where I'd been living with my in-laws. I saw my mother-in-law smiling happily as I left. I chuckled to myself, putting on a sad face, but I knew what was coming for this house next. Hi, I'm Emily, 32 years old, and I work from home. I've been married to John for 5 years. We were happy together, but things changed in our 4th year of marriage. Suddenly, my father-in-law got sick, and we had to move in with my in-laws to take care of him. We thought it would only be temporary, but John's the only child, so we ended up staying longer to help out. I even thought about quitting my job to take care of him, but luckily, I could keep working from home. Living with my in-laws was chaotic at first, but then came some issues, especially with my mother-in-law. Emily, when are you going to start doing some housework? Get cleaning and cook dinner already. I'm not just lazing around, mother-in-law. What are you talking about? You're always on that computer, surfing the web. You must be goofing off instead of doing work. The idea that using a computer means wasting time is old-fashioned. I got special permission to work from home. I didn't want to waste the skills I've worked hard to get, so I balanced my job with taking care of the house and my father-in-law. It felt good when, after about 3 months of hard work, I managed to earn as much as before. I had to work extra hard because it was tough to manage on just John's income. I'm glad we'll finally have some extra money. I want to save up, I thought. But things got harder for some reason. It seemed like our savings were just going down. When I checked our spending, I realized John was spending a lot, and I found out my mother-in-law was spending a lot too. John has always liked to show off, often treating his coworkers to lunch. But lately, he's been using our credit card to throw big parties for them. Obviously, if you spend more than you earn, your savings will go down. As for my mother-in-law, she's picked up a bunch of expensive hobbies with her friends, spending money on classes and socializing without thinking twice. With both John and my mother-in-law piling chores and caregiving on me while spending recklessly, I reached my limit. I was covering all our expenses with my income and couldn't even think about saving money. It stressed me out, so I decided to talk to them. John, Mom, you've been spending a lot lately. We're going to run out of savings if we keep this up. Can you please cut back on spending? But they both pushed back strongly. You think I want my coworkers to see me as cheap? I have to treat them sometimes. It's okay to not always be the one treating, and they won't think you're cheap if you're not always throwing parties. I have to be considerate at work too, you know. It's one thing to treat your coworkers to lunch, but taking them to a bar on your tab? How does that have anything to do with work? You're just doing it for fun, right? And don't pretend you don't know. You come home drunk and brag about it. You're having way more fun than talking to your own mom. You see what I mean, right? Haha. I go to my classes too, to have fun with my friends. Are you saying I should just stay home? You're not being a good wife. You, who only know how to do housework, have no right to tell me what to do. Why is she acting so superior when all she does is stay at home? I work too, you know. I earn money and help with the household. I'm also taking care of your dad, not just doing chores. Stop lying. My mom takes care of Dad, and since you're not even going to the office, you're not making much, are you? Who do you think you are, acting all superior just because you work part-time? I was stunned, speechless. It seemed like they didn't understand that I was really working, taking care of the house and my father-in-law, all while earning money. And my mother-in-law seemed to have told John that she was the one looking after my father-in-law, making me seem lazy. I thought about leaving many times, but I stayed for my father-in-law. He's always been kind to me since I married John, always saying, "Emily, I'm sorry you have to put up with so much." Father-in-law, I don't mind taking care of you. What are you talking about? I feel bad needing care, but I feel worse about how your son and wife are treating you. They're taking advantage of you, aren't they? Well, yes, we couldn't make ends meet with just John's income. It's all thanks to your hard work that we're getting by. Father-in-law, you knew. It turned out my father-in-law had known about our household situation all along. Whenever he needed care, he'd thank me and speak kindly to me. I loved him dearly, so taking care of him wasn't a burden at all. But I worried about what would happen to him if I left. So I decided to look after him diligently until he passed away, which happened about a year later. At his funeral, I cried the whole time, grieving deeply for him. But my mother-in-law, without shedding a tear, coldly asked me why I was crying so much. It was clear she wasn't grieving like I was. So I replied, "My father-in-law has passed away. Of course I'm sad. I've been taking care of him all this time." Upon hearing my reply, my mother-in-law exploded with anger, as if I didn't take care of my husband at all. But the truth was, she hardly took care of him. Instead, she took advantage of me, avoiding both housework and caregiving by claiming she was too busy with her hobbies. Yet she always managed to find time to go out. She played the victim, pretending to cry in front of relatives. From the outside, it looked like I was the bad daughter-in-law. People would say, "Stop being so hard on your mother-in-law." Some even took her side and blamed me. I was just grieving my father-in-law's death, but even strangers blamed me, which made me furious. I chose to distance myself from our relatives. Then John noticed me and approached to complain. "So you embarrassed my mom in front of our relatives, huh?" "What? I don't understand. I was just crying and grieving your dad's death. Then your mom came out to me, making snide comments. That's all. I heard you were talking like she did nothing for my dad." "I didn't say that. I was just saying how sad I was that your dad, who I had been taking care of, passed away. Maybe it sounded like I was blaming your mom because she didn't do anything. But in reality, are you looking down on my mom?" "No, I'm just telling the truth. And if you're so upset, you should have helped me out. Don't you think you could have taken better care of your own dad?" "Why are you blaming me too? I'm not involved in this. You're his son. Didn't you feel any responsibility to take care of him?" "I had work. It was your job as a housewife to take care of him." "That's not fair. I have work too, so that doesn't make sense." Our argument got heated, and panicked relatives intervened to break it up. Though the argument stopped, my husband and I didn't speak for the rest of the day. Later, after handling all the funeral arrangements, a lawyer talked about the inheritance. "I'd like to discuss the will regarding the inheritance after your father-in-law's passing. It states that the family home and land will be given to his son John, while the remaining assets will be split equally between his wife and daughter-in-law, Emily." "What? Why would Emily get a share? I'm his wife. Shouldn't everything else be mine if John gets the house and land? Your husband wanted to acknowledge Emily's dedication to his care. He wished to leave her a portion of the inheritance as a gesture of gratitude. This was his decision, and it cannot be changed. Ah, I understand now. So Emily was just looking after him for the inheritance. Why would you think that? It must be. Why else would she dedicate herself to caregiving? I've had a good relationship with my father-in-law ever since we got married. I took care of him to repay his kindness. If you think it's impossible, why did you push the caregiving onto me? Mother-in-law, why would you belittle me like that? Don't talk nonsense. I understand now, so let's just leave it at that. When the lawyer was there, my mother-in-law couldn't say anything rude, so she kept talking, looking annoyed. He made that decision. Well, I suppose it's a way of saying thank you for taking care of him. There's no other explanation. Then the lawyer kept talking. Can I go on? Your father-in-law wrote a note saying Emily doesn't have to look after him anymore. When the lawyer said that, my mother-in-law's face, which had been angry before, suddenly changed to a happy smile. I got it. I get what it means now. Oh, what do you mean? My husband looked confused by his mom's sudden excitement. It means Emily doesn't have to stay here anymore. Since she won't have to take care of my husband, the money split wasn't a thank you, it was just like a goodbye payment. My mother-in-law twisted my father-in-law's will based on her own ideas. She misunderstood it the way my father-in-law, and I wanted her to misunderstand it. Actually, before my father-in-law passed away, we talked about this. He wanted me to be free from this house after he died. He planned to trick my husband and mother-in-law with the will, so I could leave without any fuss. Just as my father-in-law planned, my mother-in-law, totally fooled, is trying to get rid of me. While hiding my true feelings, I acted shocked by the will, saying, "Oh, father, why would you do such a thing? See, even my husband doesn't see you as his precious daughter-in-law. John, you don't need Emily anymore, right? Just divorce her already." John, you wouldn't suggest divorce, would you? I looked at John with tears in my eyes. After a long pause, he finally said, "Yeah, it seems like the best choice. I've got the family property and Mom got the money. I won't have to worry about taking care of anyone in the future, and I won't have any issues with Emily." What? I understand. That's how it is. I'm sorry, but could you please leave? Okay, I guess I don't belong here anymore. Feeling just as hurt, I took a paper from my drawer and handed it to my husband. It was something I had picked up during a past argument, the divorce papers. Without hesitation, he signed them. Finally, I don't have to deal with you, a freeloader who doesn't contribute. Leave. Consider yourself lucky I tolerated you for this long. I understand. I'll go now. Thank you for everything up until now. By the way, since the lawyer's here, I'd like to talk about. It's fine if there's no need for property division, right? I've already received enough from my father-in-law's inheritance, and you know what, Emily? I've managed to support myself just fine. It would be greedy of me to ask for more. Well, you have a point. Okay, that settles it. Please leave this house as soon as you can. I hurriedly packed my things and left the home where I had lived. My mother-in-law watched me go with a gleeful expression, unaware of what was to come in that house. After leaving my in-laws' house, I wasted no time in submitting the divorce papers to City Hall. When I arrived at the apartment I had rented ahead of time, I couldn't contain my excitement as I shouted in the spacious room. Yes, I'm finally free at last. I couldn't help but let out a yell of joy. I was so relieved to be liberated from the painful married life. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to my father-in-law, who orchestrated my escape from that house. Since then, I've been enjoying a comfortable life on my own. While I had gotten used to working remotely at my in-laws' place, now that I've left, I have much more time to focus on my work. As a result, my income has increased, and I'm able to live a luxurious life without any disturbances. One day, I received a call from my ex-husband. "John, it's been a while. What made you call?" "Emily, please, we're struggling. Can you help us out?" "Is this a joke? Weren't you the ones who kicked me out? Even though we're earning the same, we're barely making ends meet. We can't keep living like this." "Oh, that sounds rough." I decided to lay it out straight. "Well, that's because my salary isn't supporting the household anymore." "What do you mean? Can't you see? You couldn't sustain your lifestyle just with your income, even though you were spending lavishly, and I couldn't afford our lifestyle on my own." "Nonsense. You've always been wasting your salary on yourself. The only reason we managed was because of the money I was bringing in. At your ages, your spending habits, both you and your mother, are just ridiculous. What? So how much were you making, Emily? Let me think. It was around $4,800 a month back then, I think. You were making that much. Yes, I was. But you never knew, did you? By the way, now that I'm not held back, I'm making even more. Ha ha. Even over the phone, I could sense my ex-husband's surprise. Emily, what do you say we give living together another shot? Huh? Kicking you out was a mistake. We can start over, can't we? What are you saying? You're just interested in my money. No, it's not about that. I've realized I still love you, Emily. Don't be ridiculous. I have no interest in going back to you. By the way, what about the inheritance your mother got? You should still have plenty left from that, right? Well, it's almost gone. There's no way she got around $100,000, right? You couldn't have spent it all so quickly. We went shopping and took trips overseas. Plus, we lost almost half of it in casinos. Both of you are beyond help. I'm speechless. I'm a stranger now. I can't do anything about it, and I don't want to. But don't say such cold things. Help us. I don't care. I'm hanging up. Don't call me again. After ending the call, I promptly canceled my ex-husband's phone contract. I had no clue what happened to him and my ex-mother-in-law after losing all communication means. However, nearly a year later, as I passed by their house, I noticed it had been demolished. They must have had to let go of it due to financial troubles. But honestly, it wasn't my concern anymore. As for me, I decided to fill my newfound free time with a new hobby and started attending a wine class I'd been interested in. There, I met a man 2 years older than me who showed a keen interest in me. After a year and a half of dating, we tied the knot. He's a down-to-earth and kind-hearted man, making waves at a prestigious company and earning a good salary. He respects my work, and we share a happy married life built on mutual respect. Lately, I've been pondering if this newfound happiness was a gift from my father-in-law. Hi, I'm Patricia, and I'm 54 years old. Some people might call me ordinary, but my sister-in-law thinks I'm privileged and don't understand what it's like for most people. Let me explain why. My husband, Robert, is also 54, and we both have full-time jobs. We don't have kids, so my sister-in-law thinks we're lucky because we live in a nice area. Our neighborhood is close to downtown Boston and Chinatown, plus it's easy to get around with the subway nearby. The house we live in used to belong to my grandfather, then my parents, and now us. When they passed away, we left our apartment and moved in here. So my sister-in-law is 46 years old, which is 8 years younger than me. She often comes to visit us without her husband and their 12-year-old child. It takes her 2 hours to get here from her home, and she likes spending weekends in downtown Boston. My husband, Robert, is her older brother, and he remembers her being born when he was still in elementary school. Apparently, she was a cute baby, and their parents spoiled her because she came along later in their lives. Despite all this, I just can't seem to like her. She always makes snide remarks about my life, saying things like, "You've had it easy growing up in a nice place like this, haven't you?" Her favorite phrase is, "I grew up in the countryside where there was nothing fun to do, while you must have had a cozy, carefree life." It's pretty clear she doesn't think highly of me. But despite her attitude, she enjoys visiting downtown and Chinatown and always shows up at our place without bringing anything. When I ask her about it, she says, "Even if I brought something from the countryside, you'd probably make fun of it." She keeps going on about how convenient it is for us to live without a car in the city, while people like her from rural areas spend a lot on gas. Whenever I try to defend myself, saying that her area must be nice too, she accuses me of being sarcastic. She insists that living in a city where everything is within walking distance and there's good public transportation means I don't know any real struggles. It's frustrating because when I mention that I mostly stay home working during the day, she twists my words, claiming that I'm just bragging about living near tourist spots. It makes me wonder, who's the one being sarcastic here? Sometimes my sister-in-law's words can be pretty harsh, and I've complained to Robert about it. But he just brushes it off, saying, "Oh, that's just how she is. She's very direct." Amidst all this, I heard that my sister-in-law is planning to build a house. So during one of her visits, I asked her where she planned to build it. She replied, "Obviously, near where I live now, Patricia. Unlike you, I had to buy the land. I didn't inherit any property like you did, so I can't afford to live in such a nice area. It must be nice being rich. That really got to me, so I asked her how I should have asked without being offensive. She just laughed and told me maybe I should just stay quiet because everything I say seems to offend her anyway. After that, she completely ignored me and I felt left out of the conversations. Even though she still comes over, she doesn't say a word to me anymore. But she keeps visiting even more often than before, and Robert doesn't seem to mind. I asked him why she ignores me when she's here, and he said, "I told you, Patricia, that's just how she is. You don't have to talk to her either. She leaves her husband and child at home when she visits, so we don't have to entertain them either. You don't have to go out of your way for her, but still." One day, she went out to Chinatown, came back, used the bathroom, and went straight to bed without saying a word. The next morning, she ate the breakfast I had made without even a thank you and left. I started feeling like our place had turned into a hotel. Am I supposed to be her cook, maid, and hotel manager? It feels like she should be buying a season pass at this point. 3 months later, she visited us again. Today, she planned to explore the town. But that evening, she spent a long time talking with Robert. She stayed the night and left the next day. But Robert was excited and showed me a bunch of pictures. "Hey, look at this. It's the house my sister built. Oh, her house is all built now. You're going to love this." He showed me a picture of a pristine white building. Indeed, it looked newly built and was very pretty. "Isn't this amazing?" Robert enthusiastically showed me another picture. I tilted my head, puzzled. At first glance, it looked like a garage, but from looking at the mop in the picture, I could tell it wasn't big enough to fit a car. "Who is that?" "That's right. Isn't it amazing?" Robert exclaimed proudly and then shouted out, "It's a garage for a motorcycle and it's custom made. My Harley can fit in here." What? I was completely stunned. Wait, so you're saying this is your sister's house, right? I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. And you've been talking about swapping houses? Caught off guard by this unexpected response and development, I was shocked. I dropped the plate that I was holding. She's been saying that she likes this house's location for a while now. And I've been saying that I don't like how old this house is since it's been passed down from your family for generations. Robert explained. So, she suggested, well, how about I build a new house here, and we swap houses? So I had her build a special motorcycle garage there so I can park my Harley. Wait, huh? What? I was taken aback. He never discussed any of this with me. I don't want to leave this house. It's not like I have any particular feelings about her house. Actually, I can't even process it all yet. Robert started to get irritated, perhaps because he didn't expect my objection. As far as I'm concerned, his reaction was unexpected. What are you hesitating for? My sister and I have been discussing this for a while. So what? I was never included in any of those discussions. You guys have been ignoring me this whole time. Hey, think about this. It's a really good offer. Plus, there's a garage where I can keep my motorcycle. Wait, what about me? Well, you enjoy watching suspenseful shows, right? They have a TV in their house too. Robert really loves his motorcycle. His Harley Davidson means a lot to him. As for me, I don't have many hobbies, but if I had to choose one, I like watching suspenseful shows like CSI or Columbo on Netflix. But what about my commute? Your bus and train journey will only be a little longer, that's all. Just a little longer? It's going to be an extra 2 hours. Well, I can ride my Harley. A 2-hour commute might be good for you. You've been putting on some weight lately, so think of this as a chance to lose weight. Lose weight? Even then, a 2-hour commute is crazy. I can't do that every day. But he was already excited about the new house and its garage for his Harley. He seemed surprised and annoyed that I was attached to our old house. Then he gave me an ultimatum. I'm giving our house to my sister and her husband. They have a new house with a garage for my bike. Why would you refuse? If you don't agree, I'll divorce you, he said firmly. Divorce? Did he just threaten me with divorce? I was shocked. Okay, let me sleep on it, I managed to say. I lay in bed stunned. A new house with a garage just for his bike. It seemed like it was all about Robert. His sister and her husband didn't even own a bike. They must have planned to take our house all along. And the fact that Robert agreed without talking to me first made me feel even worse. And then threatening divorce if I didn't agree? It felt like a threat. I couldn't forgive him for this. So for the next 8 hours until dawn, I was busy on my phone. The next day, I told Robert I agreed to move out, but I had a couple of requests. First, I needed 2 weeks to pack because I worked during the week. And second, they couldn't move in until we had moved out, okay? Yeah, sure, Robert said. You got them to build a garage, right? So as a thank you, I want to leave the house in really good condition. Let's hire professionals to clean it and hand it over 2 weeks after we leave. Robert agreed to that too. Happy with the arrangements, I called 2 places while Robert was out. The next 2 weeks went by quickly. Robert was happily packing, singing some strange song about his Harley. I called my sister-in-law to ask, how big are the rooms in your house? I needed to figure out where to put our furniture. They were also calling us about their layout since they were moving from an apartment. 4 weeks' notice for moving is really short. It seems like they're rushing to get ready for their move. Then, on moving day, there was a knock on the door. Hello, we're from U-Haul Moving and Storage, said the first group of movers when they arrived. Great, come on in, Robert directed them. But soon after, there was another knock. Hello, we're from 2 Men and a Truck, said another group of movers. Robert was surprised. I quickly stepped in. Sure, come on in, I said, ushering them inside. Wait, what's happening? Robert exclaimed. What's happening is I said we're moving, so I'm moving to our new home, I explained. Okay, everyone, the boxes with yellow tape are mine. Please bring those this way. The rest can go with U-Haul, I said quickly. An hour later, I said, well, thanks for your help. I'll send you the divorce papers later. Wait a minute, Robert panicked. I glanced back. You're the one who wanted a divorce, remember? I left Robert behind and hopped into the taxi I had called. But the ride was short. Long day, huh? A man approached me. It was my older brother, Dave. He had come to help me move. Well, it's good you found a place in 2 weeks. It's just a rental, but yeah. What a mess. It's more than a mess. Anyway, I marked all the important stuff like the rice cooker with yellow tape, so I'll manage on my own. Dave pitched in. Even though the movers handled the big stuff, I still needed help with the rest, so his help was huge. With Dave's assistance, I got everything moved in one day. All right then, give me a call in a couple of weeks, my brother said as he left. 2 weeks went by since I moved. Just as I anticipated, my phone rang. Hello, my sister-in-law said on the other end. What's happening? I stayed silent, just listening. The house is gone. I tried not to laugh and look down. It was hard not being able to speak. It's just an empty lot now. Why aren't you saying anything? You told me to keep quiet, remember? I replied. My sister-in-law screamed loudly, and I couldn't help but burst out laughing. It turns out my sister-in-law and Robert are in on it together. Then Robert got on the phone. Did you have to do all that? He yelled, sounding almost like he was going to cry. Hey, you're the one who threatened me. I couldn't help but find it hilarious. And remember, I said I wanted to leave the house clean, didn't I? Your way of cleaning is extreme, he retorted. It's the cleanest slate possible. A chance for a fresh beginning, Robert said, clearly frustrated, his fists clenched. Anyway, come over so we can discuss this. There's nothing to discuss. If you don't come, I won't sign the divorce papers. Do you remember when I initially refused to leave the house? You threatened to divorce me. It's funny how fast you've changed your tune. Shut up. All right, I'll come to your place, but I'm too nervous to come alone, so I'll bring someone with me. I contacted my brother. Are you up for this? He replied, absolutely. He's always been dependable. Thank you all for gathering today. My sister-in-law's husband, whom I hadn't seen since the wedding, started, almost like it was another wedding ceremony. He seemed shy. My brother Dave, my husband, his sister, her husband, and I all sat around the table in my husband's new home. We couldn't have the kids with us, so they were in the next room. But the atmosphere in our room was tense. My sister-in-law had come in cheerful, but she was shocked to see an empty lot where the house used to be. Since they'd already given up their apartment, they couldn't go back in a hurry. So the movers brought all their stuff to my sister-in-law's new house. Now there were 2 of everything, 2 cabinets, 2 tables, making the space feel really cramped. Seeing everything doubled up was a shock. It felt like something you'd hear about in a TV broadcasting mishap. Why would you demolish the place? This is too much, Robert's sister exclaimed angrily. Robert joined in, yeah, just because my sister is easygoing and you're sensitive doesn't give you the right to do this to her. How could you sink so low? They were both yelling, but I couldn't help but laugh. I inherited that London house. It was originally my grandfather's, so I can do whatever I want with it. My husband defended himself. Then my brother added, basically, since Patricia inherited the London house, it's her individual property and doesn't count as marital assets. So you, as her husband, don't have the right to decide what happens to it or give it to your sister. Huh? What? My sister-in-law and husband were stunned by the unexpected revelation. Well, if you had told us that from the start, this could have been avoided. Robert tried to deflect blame. Classic Robert and Patricia, always in sync. So are we just blaming each other now? I thought silently. It's too late to object. My sister-in-law's husband sighed. You threatened me with divorce and told me not to talk to your sister. So I couldn't say anything. I finally spoke up. Patricia was threatened with divorce, and you wouldn't even let us talk to your sister. What choice did we have? Dave chimed in. So I decided to sell the property. The house was too big for me to live in alone anyway. The truth is, the day after I was threatened with divorce, I made 2 phone calls. One was to Dave, and the other was to a demolition company. They said it would take 10 days to demolish the house. My sister-in-law lives about 2 hours away, so she wouldn't have had time to come here after getting short notice for the move. Same goes for my husband, who moved to a newly built home near his sister's apartment. And that's how their new home ended up being an empty lot. That's enough. We've lost our home. And we had to move twice because we stayed at Robert's house temporarily when we found out ours was gone, which doubled our moving costs. My sister-in-law exclaimed, Do I look like I care? You should be grateful you're not being sued for trespassing on my property. You couldn't move in because it was razed to the ground, so you dodged a bullet. Ha ha ha. I couldn't help but laugh. Does that mean you didn't have Patricia's permission to start all this moving business? My quiet brother-in-law finally spoke up. That's right. She told us to stay quiet and my husband threatened me. They just went ahead and made plans without us. My sister-in-law's husband revealed. Hey, what were you thinking? You've been spending money in Boston and Chinatown for the past 3 months. You left me and the kids while you went shopping, and now that you've decided to live there, you sold our car. We can't live without a car here. But this house only has a garage for a motorcycle. Do you realize how much trouble you've caused everyone in your family? My brother-in-law erupted in anger. What's wrong with you? My sister-in-law looked shaken. It seemed like she had never seen him this angry before. Patricia, my brother-in-law continued, this one here told me I'm going to take my brother's house and move. If you disagree, I'll divorce you. Can you believe it? It's surprising how much siblings can think alike. I was nearly bursting with laughter. I knew I'd have a sore stomach from laughing too much tomorrow. But since I'm a software engineer who can work from anywhere, and I didn't want the kids to be without their mom, I agreed to her demand. But now, seeing how things have turned out, I realize how my wife's selfishness could hurt our whole family. And what you said earlier about Robert's threat, that really woke me up. My brother-in-law took a deep breath and, looking at his wife, said, You threatened me. Finally, he declared, Well, it's over for us too. I'll take care of and raise the kids. I'll treat your threat like a proposal. Now it's my turn, I said, turning to my husband. Robert, I'll also treat your demand like a proposal. We're truly done now. Goodbye. Oh wait, if I lose the house, doesn't that change things? Robert exclaimed. Exactly. The situation has changed, so it's not fair to cut us off like this, his siblings both shouted. I just brushed them off. My brother-in-law said, You guys created this ridiculous situation, got all excited, and now you're just back to square one. After that, my sister-in-law's husband and I each hired a lawyer and pursued a mediated divorce. The newly built house that my sister-in-law had built was going to go to her husband, along with custody of the kids. My sister-in-law, who was always spending money and rarely at home, often left the kids' care to her husband, even on weekends. The kids felt distant and lonely, but now that they're living with just their father, they say they're happier because they know their father will always be there for them. The new house ended up belonging to my sister-in-law's ex-husband because she couldn't afford the mortgage payments. It was shocking that she could spend money in Boston every 3 months without having any income. Her spending habits didn't change, and she ended up buried in debt. The motorcycle garage was going to be torn down to make space for a parking lot. My ex-husband, who had been working all this time, couldn't afford to keep his Harley after the divorce. Losing his bike and his hobby, he turned to alcohol to cope with his frustrations. I turned the empty lot where our house used to be into a parking lot. Being near Boston and Chinatown allowed me to charge high prices for parking, which became a steady income. With that money, I bought a cozy one-bedroom apartment. Sitting in front of the TV, I smirked as I watched my favorite show, CSI, with a beer in hand. I enjoyed a relaxing evening in my pajamas, with snacks and no interruptions. It was the perfect way to unwind after a long day.